introduction. There'll be someone who doesn't know who you are. All right, I want to tell you why we chose Jackie to come here. To me, she is one of the most knowledgeable people in the women, peace, and security space. So let me just read her little bio. She is a global fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center's Canada Institute. She's the former president of the DC-based Institute for Inclusive Security, which is engraven on my heart as one of the institutions that I think has done the most in the WPS field. For nearly 15 years, she has contributed to the establishment of this field of inclusive security, which I believe is at the heart of women, peace, and security, and its application in government, security forces, and multilateral organizations. With partners in government and civil society, she has supported the creation of these national action plans in more than 30 countries, NATO, the OSCE, and the UN, and directly supported coalition of women leaders in Colombia, South Sudan, Pakistan, and beyond. And so for all of the incredible work that she's done, and I know that many of you in this room know exactly what Jackie O'Neill has meant to the field of women, peace, and security. Let's give her a good introduction.
All right, everybody. I am not Olivia, to your disappointment. I wish I were as well. I just want to start by, on behalf of all the guests who are here today, saying a few thank yous. So big thank you to the Bush School, to Dean Welsh, to all the students. I think engaging and speaking with the students who've been here has been a huge highlight for all of us who are visiting. To all those who are faculty and instructors and took the time to come by today, to everybody who spoke on the Texas Perspectives panel, that it was a hugely important panel, and it's great to blend these worlds that often don't talk. To also all the townies who came. I'm told I'm allowed to say the word townies, and it's not offensive, so good to know. Huge thanks to you, Dr. Hudson. We'll come back to you in a sec. To Megan and the rest of her team. She's probably not here because she's organizing something. Yeah, there's Megan. Hi. To all the staff here at the school who helped with room setup, with audio visuals, with recording everything, with cooking and serving our food today, bringing us coffee, etc. And perfectly timed, I also wanted to add a special shout out to baby Aiden and his parents who brought him here today. He's clapping for himself awesomely. A bit of a pro tip to people who want to work in this field. I have spent like a lot of hours in workshops in places like Sudan and Colombia and Pakistan and everywhere that we've done this work, you know, often very hot, very sweaty environments where you're tired, there's flip charts all around. And if you want to work in this field, you got to get used to, and not just get used to, but embrace there being kids in workshop sessions. They are not only incredibly powerful and humanizing, but I've seen the power of them breaking down silos, seeing people from literally warring factions play together with the same baby, et cetera. And it's something we don't talk about in this women, peace, and security space, but it's a really powerful thing. So I thank you, baby Aiden and family, for bringing him here. All right, so I am, thanks. I'm acutely aware that I am, first of all, standing between you and food and drink. And I have not been out of school for so long that I don't understand the value of free food and drink, so we won't spend too long. But above all, I also know my own limitations in terms of an ability to summarize what's gone on. So I'm not going to summarize. I'm going to offer just two reflections on themes or sort of threads from the day. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about next steps and what each person in this room is going to do to apply or to operationalize, as we might say, what we've heard today. So first, the two threads or themes that came out and emerged for me. The first one is, I found really striking the relevance and the impact of the work that's coming out of the Bush School at Texas A&M. And I want to highlight that because, you know, I sat with a number of students who talked to me about taking Dr. Hudson's classes and taking other classes here and saying, like, those classes have really rocked my world. And I think that the people here at the school may not understand fully how much Dr. Hudson and her team and all of this work, including your own, have really influenced the policy world. And I think it's particularly difficult to do when you're at a school that's outside the Northeast corridor of the United States, that's in Texas. And that I really want to emphasize the degree to which people, almost every single speaker today, referenced some element of the work that you've led. And that's powerful and that's a big deal. And I think, you often don't get the credit you deserve in your own home, but I think it's important for people here to realize how powerful your work has been and this school's work has been. And, just to dig further on that, I think there's two big reasons why. One is that the substance of the work is really profound. So it's both forward-looking and provocative. And it also has backed up or given an evidentiary base to what so many women, peace builders in particular around the world, have been saying for so long, but not been taken seriously when they said. So there's the substance of the work. And I think it's also just really important to highlight that Dr. Hudson, you personally are a master class in presenting information in a way that policymakers can digest. And that is rare. And that extends beyond just this field. But, I think you named your book Sex and World Peace. Like, is there anything more provocative, more attention grabbing, et cetera? And you can translate your complex research into phrases and examples that we give and we cite regularly on this kind of front line of policy advocacy from my perspective, and that's a big deal. The second big thread or observation that I'll go over quickly is obvious, but I want to spend 1 second on it, which is just that the women, peace, and security field, as we know, basically is an ecosystem. And for an ecosystem to survive, we need a range of different types of actors. So the types of actors that many of us here represent are not just interesting, but also essential to the healthy functioning and growth of this movement. So we need storytellers who convey narratives. We need researchers and academics who collect and analyze data. We need students who ask for courses and course material. We need people who can work systems and transform organizations. Brad, I'm looking at you. We need people who can work directly. We need people who can research and teach students how to research. But what's also struck me today is that each person working within this is also essentially an ecosystem. So policymakers also want to hear stories, and they need to be moved, and they need their intuition to be spoken to. And storytellers and people who make movies need data, and they want to sprinkle things in with academic research in a way that people can understand. So we bring our whole selves to this work, and the idea that there's only one type of advocacy or change or anything that's going to be prompted just won't hold. So our ecosystem in doing this has been growing, and I think most of us here would agree it also needs to be expanded. And we heard a lot of ideas today about others that we can bring into this work in this space. So we talked about members of intelligence communities, about people, more allies in judicial branches. I think we should push ourselves to think of others to whom we want to include, or whom we want to include in this ecosystem. Maybe more anthropologists, maybe more artificial intelligence specialists, maybe more people who focus on issues like corruption, like Sarah, who we heard from, and maybe many more people who can connect what's going on in the United States, for example, to this concept of women, peace, and security that we talked about. And I think as we do that, we should also reflect on how this can be a somewhat scary or intimidating ecosystem, as Brad really highlighted for us today, and to think about what we are doing to both invite people in, to make them feel welcome once they're inside, and to really encourage people to be part of this system that we know needs to function, and reflect on what we are doing to project or to make people feel insecure about it. Are we over-jargonizing ourselves? Are we sitting in cliques? Are we making people feel like if they say the wrong word or the wrong phrase, they're not good allies, et cetera? So I think we can reflect on that. Okay, so what is next from here? We've had a lot of big ideas today and a lot of concepts, and I know that as a policy school, you're focused on relevance and on change. So I want to spend a little bit of time to close out the day talking about what we're going to do with what we heard. And I know everybody's here is going to do big things. As Sarah said, we're going to change 1 million years of encoded DNA and human practice, which was unbelievably sobering and it's crazy, but also true. But I think we all know that big things happen as a culmination of things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So Elizabeth Weingart and I, as you know, and we've talked about, have been really into behavioral sciences lately, meaning ways that we get people to turn intentions into action. And one of the things we know is that you're significantly more likely to actually do something you want to do if you write it down. You're even more likely to do that thing if you tell it to someone else. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna give you a number of ideas of something that you can do. So don't worry, I'm gonna give you some ideas. But then we're gonna take 2-3 minutes, and I want everyone to talk to the person next to them or someone else in the room and say one specific thing you are going to do differently or as a result of having been here today. So as I promised, I'm gonna give you a few ideas. First one is to state the obvious, just vote. Please vote, 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 vote tomorrow, vote anytime you can. Had to say that one. Second one, do a gender audit of a curriculum in at least one of your classes. So this applies to students and to professors. So take a look at your syllabus, at your reading list, and just look at how many female authors are assigned, how many male authors assigned. And I'd challenge you to keep going. How many people of color, how many indigenous perspectives, how many voices of traditionally marginalized groups, how many voices of the people most directly affected by the issue are being read, listened to, heard, incorporated in some way in the issues that you're studying. And a note here in particular, if you're a professor and you decide to add more of these voices, I think it's essential to reflect on the biases that we have in terms of whose voices count and how those voices are conveyed. So we have strong biases for words, for the written word. We have strong biases for the written word in English. And we live in a world, as we all know, where women's voices, voices of local communities have been discounted. And that means that we have discounted the importance of people without formal education, who cannot write in English, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I think so much of the work that's being done here today to capture video interviews, to capture things like poetry that women from conflict situations have written about their experiences. We must keep bringing the direct voices of those who are most affected into this. So, you know, we have, even on Inclusive Security's, Inclusive Security has on its website, list of just bulleted point priorities from coalitions of women leaders. These are not long narratives, they're not peer-reviewed texts, et cetera, but they're priorities of women, of representative samples of where groups of women directly affected by conflict. So there are different ways to incorporate into curricula these voices. And I was reflecting when Jamie was talking about Pray the Devil Back to Hell. Abby Disney, one of the producers at the outset, said several years ago, it was really important to her that film did not have a narrator, because almost invariably that narrator would have been someone with a somewhat indistinguishable kind of non-accent, possibly a man, but a woman, et cetera. She said, people have spoken for African women long enough. And so if you think about that film, the story is told through the direct voices of the Liberian women. And these are the kinds of things I think we need to be thinking about as we're talking about representation. So that was point 2. They won't all be so long, I promise. Point 2 is audit your courses. Number 3 is audit your news sources. So pick any given day, read the news as you normally would, and ask yourself, how many female journalists have you been reading? How many women are cited or quoted as experts? And how many women are referenced only as victims? A friend of mine who was just recently left the New York Times has a great line. Her name is Gina Moore, and she says, being the object of compassion is not the same as being the subject of a story. And I think often we hear women's voices, but it's told from, this was the horrible thing that happened, and we will now turn to this scholar from CSIS who will give us a perspective on what needs to happen. Being the object of compassion is not the same as being the subject of a story. Number 4, audit your images. So think about your school or your workplace and all of the pictures and images that you pass on a daily basis. So the photos hanging on the wall, the images of people who are meant to convey power and status. Dr. Torres talked earlier about the importance of them and how not having images, a range of images, can produce cognitive dissonance. And I think we've seen this a lot in advocacy when people hear only about women as victims. And we were talking about the video or the advertisements, postings of women who are crying or in a corner and huddled. It's very hard cognitively to then say those women deserve a seat around the negotiating table or the policy-making table. These are layers of cognitive dissonance that add up because of imagery. Professor Taylor Robinson also talked about that too, these mental templates that we're permitting to exist in our own environment. So think about that. Think about a specific workplace, and if you have control over it, try to change it. Number 5, do an implicit bias test on yourself. So if you go to Project Implicit, which is implicit.harvard.edu, you can do a 15-minute test on bias and any range of things. So bias in race and gender, and sexuality and age, et cetera. Dean Walsh talked at the beginning about wanting to be part of the diversity solution, not the diversity problem. And I think part of that is actually knowing at a deeper level your own biases. Number 6 is to share opportunities. And what I mean by that is that we are in a place and time where this field is still relatively small and fairly new. And there's a scarcity of opportunities to write about them, to talk about them, to be invited to high-level events about them, et cetera. And scarcity can breed competition. And so I think we need to actively resist that competition at all times, and not just resist it, but upend it. So if you're asked to write something, co-author it. Co-author it with someone who was most directly affected by that issue. If you're asked to speak at something, share your time or do a joint presentation, as I have not done today. If you're going to lead something like an organization or a project, unchain yourself from traditional models of leadership and have a joint leadership model. Have a shared committee structure. There's pluses and minuses, and the notion that every project needs to have a single leader is not necessarily what needs to apply. I'm reading right now, we're talking about reading and sharing books, and people who know me know I get very annoying when I read something that I'm really into. I talk about it all the time. You poorly had to listen to it at dinner last night. But one of the books I'm reading right now is an autobiography of Buffy Sainte-Marie. Has anyone heard of Buffy Sainte-Marie? She was a folk musician in the 60s who was born on an Indigenous reserve in Canada, was adopted by parents in the United States. Long, amazing story. Highly recommend you read it. But what she talks about is how she was always asked to come and do something, and she'd say, I will do this if there are other Indigenous people in this community who will do something alongside me, who will be in this film with me, who will make this video, who will come and sing at the White House, et cetera, et cetera. And her phrasing is, don't absorb the light, reflect it. In a similar vein, pledge not to be on a manel. So this is number 7. Don't be on an all-male panel, and create a policy about it for your bureau or your department. And I love this line. The editor of Bloomberg News, John Micklethwait, announced a policy a few months ago on outside speaking engagements for Bloomberg journalists. And here's an excerpt from his memo, which I loved. So this was to all Bloomberg News staff. He said, if you're asked to participate on a panel as a speaker or a moderator, you should ensure there is at least one woman panelist prior to asking for approval. At risk of stating the obvious, that woman could be you. Panelists are not finalized when you're first asked to participate. Please inform the organizers of this requirement, kindly explaining that if these can't be met, you will have to decline. If you still think there's a case for being on an all-male panel, if, for instance, you are asked to moderate a panel of Catholic cardinals or members of the Chinese Politburo, please explain this to person X and to me. But I think this is a standard we should be able to uphold in the vast majority of occasions. And if an organization needs suggested names for its panel, feel free to recommend from our own database. Number 8 is to build your own skills as a holistic advocate. I know a lot of people shun the idea of being an advocate, but if you're here and you're committed to the importance of this issue, you are an advocate in some way. You're an advocate within your organization, you're an advocate within your family about why this matters, et cetera. And oftentimes I think we focus on building our knowledge as advocates, but not necessarily our skills. So I, for example, am a very bad storyteller. I really want to improve my ability to tell stories because I know that will improve my advocacy. If you're a hardcore data person, take a class or develop the skill of writing an op-ed. So skills, skills, skills for advocacy, not just knowledge. Number 9 is to break a silo. As you were talking about, how many years did it take to be on a panel together? 4 years, 6 years. So if you think there's someone in this, or who should be in this ecosystem and who is not, have one coffee with them, send one email, do something to proactively break a silo. And the 10th idea would be to organize a screening of the Women, War, and Peace series premiere on PBS in March with your family, your friends, et cetera. So I've given you 10 ideas. You can invent something totally different, but I want you to find one partner, spend the next 2 to 3 minutes talking about the very specific thing you're gonna do, and then I'm gonna ask a few people to share them. Go. Okay, 2 minutes, and then I'm going to take some examples. You can think of more than 2 if you guys have, or 1 if you've already. All right. Okay, we're going to save some conversation, for, Okay, everybody, we still have reception. You can make more commitments during the reception we're about to head into. But I'd love to hear from some of you what you're going to do, what you're committing to. Who wants to volunteer to share what you're going to do? Yes, please. This is not how this concept works. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Excellent. Good. Who else wants to share something? Elizabeth, what might you think? was one I heard today from someone who always inspires and energizes me, and that's Commander Suzanne Maynor, who said at one point in her excellent talk, if you have a better vision of how things can be, lead. And that's what I want to leave you with. So lead, everybody, and thank you very much, Valerie, for having us.